It's just me today, ladies and gentlemen. Kirk and Jess are off doing their bow hunting and scouting thing off in the great woods. And so it's just myself, just me here. And I have something I want to talk to you about today. And that something is talent. I was watching a marathon the other day, and I'm not going to say the marathon and I'm not going to say the person because I'm going to critique the person. And it's not fair. I don't know that person and they don't know me. And I don't know their full reasoning behind what they said. All I know is how it hit me, but I'm going to critique it. And so, as such, I'm going to keep it a little bit anonymous. But the runner basically said, I am not a talented runner. I don't have much talent, but I outworked everyone. And I got to this point. And this point was a 2:12 marathon. This point was being an Olympic trials qualifier, almost making the Olympics, being a national caliber marathoner, being able to hold 5-minute miles for 26 miles. And it didn't really sit well with me, but it highlighted the way we think about talent as athletes. And I want to discuss that today because I think there's some pretty unfortunate and incorrect implications about the nature of talent. So this runner talked about how in high school they were a 23 minute 5K runner when they first started out, which was their proof that I am not a talented runner. There are tens of thousands of runners across the US who are 23 minute 5K runners. Graduated without ever having broke 16 in a 5K. I think it was like 1650, 1640, which is fast, but not fast enough to even get a D1 scholarship offer. And then went on to college and had to walk on and eventually made the team, and got faster, broke 15 in a 5K, but never broke 14. And all their peers were breaking 14 in the 5K. And then went on to the marathon. And despite not having run any times in their history that would give any semblance of hope towards being a 2:12 marathoner, ran like a 2:17 debut and then a 2:15 and then a 2:12, and basically said, listen, all these times I've run in the past spoke to the fact that I'm not talented. I just outworked people to get to where I am. And now this is where I am. So this is proof that hard work can beat or equal talent every single time. And that if you're not talented, you can get to this point. And I agree with every single fact along the way. And I disagree with the conclusion. I agree that they did not show signs of talent in the 5K in high school. They did not show signs of 2:12 marathon talent anywhere along the way. But I disagree with the conclusion that, and so I'm not talented, I just outworked everyone. Because talent is not linear. Talent is also not something that manifests at the same rate for every individual. We glamorize and glorify child prodigies. Oh my goodness, that kid is so talented. And it's true. You can spot the presence of talent very easily. Despite it being invisible, despite there being no test for talent, you know talent when you see it. When it's the obvious, in your face, early rising talent. The high school boy who breaks 4 minutes in a mile. The high school girl who breaks 16 minutes in a 5K. Undeniably huge talent. However, that's not the only type of talent that exists. And it's also not an indication of where your ceiling is. Being an early riser with talent does not also equate to having the highest ceiling. And we see this time and time again. We have had, I want to say, at least 7 high school boys break 4 minutes in the mile in the last decade who did not ever make it to pro running. They were the fastest runner in their state, one of the top 1 to 3 in the entire nation as a high schooler, faster than many college runners, went on to either not even finish out their college career, to never run a second faster than they ran in high school, and none of them became pro runners. And why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons that can lead to that, but one major one is that showing brilliance early does not mean your ceiling's any higher than anyone else. Now, being a sub 4 minute miler, already means that your ceiling's higher than most people. But it doesn't mean it's higher than any of the other people who are bound to be pros eventually. Talent does not manifest on the same timeline for everyone. In fact, most of the national champions, most of the world champions have not been the fastest person at the junior level. The junior world champion rarely goes on to be world champion. In fact, more often than not, they do not. The junior world record holder rarely goes on to be the all-comers world record holder. More often than not, they don't. And again, injuries play into that. Burnout plays into that. But ceiling plays into that as well. Part of what the talent spectrum entails is that there are some people that just improve rapidly. Their talent shows up really early. There are the people, we've all known them, either on a team with us or in a gym with us, who they can show up into a gym, casually flit around exercise to exercise, and they just balloon up in size and they shred down. And it doesn't make any sense. But they're rarely the person that goes on to win a bodybuilding championship or powerlifting championship. Sometimes they do, but it's no guarantee of that. On the other side of the coin, there are the so-called hard gainers, the people that have to work their butts off for 3 times as long to get the same results, often less results. But at the world level, there's no real guarantee that being a hard gainer or an easy gainer is your ticket to success or failure. It's the people who are able to put in a decade or two of work. And the same thing happens on the running scene. There are runners who are going to be 22-minute 5K runners as freshmen. And there are runners who are going to be 15-minute 5K runners as freshmen. And neither one of those knows what their ceiling is until they get there. But we often guess and assume. This runner who I was talking about, this marathoner who can now run 5 minutes per mile for 26 miles, because he started off slower than all of his peers, he never lost that belief that he has no talent, that he is a talentless runner. He is a self-made runner. He did it off hard work. And that's not good for the running community. I know when these runners say it, part of it is because they just wholeheartedly believe it. They've lived their life, their entire life. They've felt and seen all the people around them be naturally faster. And so, yes, in their mind, it is a proven fact that they do not have that same level of talent. But what this gentleman is failing to grasp is that it takes an insane level of talent to be able to work yourself to the point of being able to run a 2:12 marathon, a 2:10 marathon. Insane talent. Maybe the same amount of talent it takes to run a 4-minute mile in high school. Getting there early or getting there late does not change how much talent you have. It means you have a different type of talent. Yours takes longer to manifest. That's the only real difference. And so think about Derek Rubis. Derek Rubis is a guest that we interviewed probably 2 years ago now. If you didn't listen to it, go back and listen to it. This is kind of a spoiler, but not really. He went through some incredibly difficult times and was on, I believe, dialysis and chemo, and essentially couldn't be more than a mile away from his house at any time because things could just go wrong. But the man kept running 80 to 100 mile weeks inside of his house, and he didn't have a treadmill. So he was running 15 miles a day on a path through living room, bedroom, kitchen. 15 miles of that every day. Who's outworking that? No one. I've never met anyone more dedicated to running than Derek Rubis. For decades, he has had that level of drive. Doesn't miss days, doesn't make excuses. He is the hardest worker in almost every room he's ever been in. Yet Derek Rubis is not a college level runner. He's not a pro level runner. He is not going to ever be a 2:12 or 2:10 marathoner. He is a mid-pack runner at best, and he has earned every single second of that. Every time he PRs, it's through nothing but hard work. Every person he beats on course, he has earned as much as anyone I've ever known in my life has earned it. 15-mile runs day in and day out inside of his home. No one's outworking him. but the talent isn't there at the same level. And so we can't just look around and say, I got here because of hard work. Hard work does not beat talent. It doesn't. Now, if you're closer, if you're one notch below someone's talent level, you can outwork them and beat them. But I think that's it. I think 2 notches is it's already out the window. What you have though, if you beat them through hard work, is you have a different type of talent. And that should be encouraging for people, which is why I didn't love the idea that he said, I don't have any talent, but I got here. Well, it doesn't reflect well on any of the rest of us who work their butts off. And I'm not even including myself in this because I've never been the hardest worker in any room I've ever been in. But the rest of the running community who does work their butts off and just has no prayer at ever running a 2:10 marathon, it doesn't reflect well on them. If the facts were that anyone with any level of talent could do this if they're willing to work as hard as me. Well, there can only be one hardest worker. And what are the odds it's you? You know, it's very low. But there's a ton of really, really, really hard workers who will never be within a minute per mile, a 5-minute pace for a marathon. Even if you could take all the drugs in the world and ensure that you never got hurt and you ran 30 miles a day on triples, those athletes still could never be within a minute per mile of that pace. But this should also be encouraging because kind of the status quo is look around, see who is an early riser. And those are the talented athletes. And those are the people who move on and get all the opportunities. And I'm just not talented, so why pursue it? Well, if we can accept the fact that some people take longer to get to the same spot, then we can accept the fact that there's always hope. Because if one athlete can run 2:10 in their debut marathon at the age of 17, and another athlete can run 2:10 in their 7th marathon at the age of 30, do they have a different level of talent? Arguably, no. One has talent that came out right away, and other has talent that was a slow bake. It took time to get there, but it's undeniable that it took that level of talent to be able to do that. It took an oxygen transport system. It took a musculature that was able to accept all that hard work that they put in over decades and manifested in speed. If they didn't have the talent to absorb it, they wouldn't have gotten any better. 2 decades of work doesn't matter if you don't have talent. But what that means is that if we're not initially good at something or the best at something, the boat hasn't sailed. We haven't missed it. My dad used to drive this home to us because we are late growers in my family, especially on the men's side. All my uncles grew after high school. And so when I was incredibly small on my freshman physical, 5 foot 1/2 inch, 102 pounds. Grew 10 inches in high school, and I grew another 1.5 inches after high school. That's really tough to keep up in sports. But what he drove through my head was that all you have to do is stay with it and other people drop off. There's always going to be something. They're either going to plateau early. They're going to hit their peak in 8th grade or 10th grade or 12th grade. You just have to hang on and stick around long enough to find out how good you can be, and other people will drop off, either because they're not as good as we thought they could project out to, or because other things get in the way. They get jobs, they get a girlfriend, they get injured, they lose interest, they get in trouble. Whatever it's going to be, people are going to hit their plateau or they're going to drop off. Just hang around longer. And I had to go all in on that belief and trust him on that because I didn't have any other option. I was too obsessed with athletics to have any other option. And so I just believed it until I saw it come true. And then you get to the college level and he kept repeating that. All right, you're fully grown now. But not everyone can handle the rigors of this. So just keep showing up. They're going to drop off. And what I'm not saying is that we're all going around just preying on others' downfalls. That's not it. We don't wish anything wrong on anyone else. But the fact is people are going to drop off. New people are going to show up. But you're going to keep improving if you're the person who just believes, listen, I'm a hard gainer. It's not that I'm not talented. It's just that I haven't unearthed all of my talent yet. We have to be optimists as runners. We have a painful, oftentimes unloving sport. We wake up in the morning and have to do a chore rather than a skill. You don't play running. It's a chore. It's a punishment for some sports. It's a conditioning for other sports. We don't play our sport, we do it. And so day in and day out, it's difficult, and we need to have hope that there's a reason for that. And the hard gainer talent is a real thing. And we need to believe that that's us. We also need to believe that it's going to take 8 to 10 years for us to start getting a glimpse of what our ceiling could be. 8 to 10 years of consistent, good training, solid training. Doesn't have to be world-class training, but it needs to be consistent. Running more days than you're not running. If you can't claim 8 to 10 years of running more days than you're not running, you can't claim to have maxed out your talent. You can't claim to even really truly know what your talent is. I've been a coach for about 20 years, everything from middle school up to professional athletes. And I can say that without a doubt, I cannot identify who's going to be a world champion. Can't. It's impossible to do early on. You can identify the high flyers, but high flyers are just that. They're high flyers in that moment. There is no way of knowing. Of all the kids I coached at the high school level, the fastest ones were not the fastest kids at the college level, and were not the fastest adults. It's just not a linear progression through sport. We kind of do car analogies a lot on here, but just think of it as top speed. If you have a sports car that's rev limited at 100 miles per hour, and you have a minivan that's rev limited at 100 miles per hour, sports car is going to get up to 100 miles per hour relatively quickly. It might be there in 15 or 20 seconds. The minivan might take a minute to get there, but they both reach 100 miles per hour. Now, the sports car has been at 100 for a while. It's been at there almost a minute by the time you get there. It's already burning through gas. It's already putting stress on all the parts of its frame and in its engine and everything. There's a chance it doesn't even stay at 100 for very long. And it's rev limited. Let's say we both can't go faster than 100. There's a real chance that that minivan is doing 100 longer into its life than that sports car is because it hasn't broken down. It also doesn't make it any more talented. Sports car is flashier. It got there quicker. Along the way, everyone who watched it go by said, man, that thing is fast. But at the end of the road, they're both at the same speed. And what's more practical? Being able to get there and not being sure if you'll ever get better, not being sure if you can sustain it, or working your way sequentially towards something and then arriving there. Now, I'm not saying it's one or the other. We don't have a say in it. And I'm not saying one or the other is bad or good. But what I do know is that talent is talent. It just takes different paths to get there. And I also believe very firmly in this theory that I call the attribute point theory. And some of you have heard me talk about this before. But I believe that human beings are inherently no different than video game characters. For those of you who are not gamers, the way that they have a video game character is that they have a set of attribute columns. Let's call it speed, strength, stamina, endurance, intelligence, quickness, problem solving, durability, different things like that. And there's a set number of attribute points that you can allot across the board in these different attribute columns. Now, if you're doing a create a player, everyone has to start with the same number of points. And you get to decide where you put them in these columns in order to create your strengths and weaknesses of these video game characters. Sports games are just full of this, as are fighting games. But it's not really that important that you understand video games, as long as you understand that everyone starts with, let's call it 100 attribute points. And you might have 10 columns, and you have to choose where do I and how do I parcel out these points so that it makes a character that I want to use. Well, with this system, there are always going to be peaks and valleys. When I used to play Madden NFL back in the day, I always created myself as a running quarterback so that I could just rack up the points and stats with myself. I was the only one that touched the ball unless I was passing. And I would always use as many points as possible on speed and agility. And then I would build up the passing accuracy or power over time because you didn't have enough points to give it to everything. You couldn't make yourself the best well-rounded athlete right off the start. You had to build it out over the course of seasons. As you produced better, you had better statistics, they would give you more attribute points in the areas that you showed to be good at. But everyone was dealing with about the same number of points. They were just parceled out differently. And I believe that human beings follow that same rule. I believe that most of us deal with about the same number of attribute points. They just show up differently in our columns. And that's kind of the nature of talent. How many points do you have in every walk of life? And I believe that this is also why the greater people are in some areas, the greater they have a glaring hole elsewhere in their personality or in their life. Why some of the greatest athletes of all time are narcissists. Why some of the greatest minds in all of human history have an inability to sustain really positive social human interactions. I believe that for every strength, there's a drawback. And I'm not saying that they're related, that every person who's smart also has this deficiency. That's not it. But outside of the truly exceptional people, I don't think that we really play with that many different attribute points. And so if that's true, then you have to wonder where the drawback is for talent level. And if you have a talent that gets you someplace really, really quickly, very oftentimes we find that talent is paired with a deficiency in durability. Oftentimes that talent is paired with a deficiency in mental fortitude. Not always, but often. People that just burn out on the sport early. And it's not always their fault. People who have their talent manifest early get a huge amount of attention, a huge amount of success, a huge amount of media, a huge amount of expectations, and then that leads to burnout. It leads to stress and anxiety. But oftentimes, the people that improve most rapidly, the fastest responders to stimulus, are also the people who have a tendency to be more fragile, that get injured more often, that burn out quicker and easier. Where the hard gainers, by their nature, tend to also be incredibly durable. People who would consider themselves less talented, but able to just handle work for months and years and even decades at a time. And so where your talent lies is not by itself. Being an early shower of talent is no guarantee of being healthy and fast 10 years from now. And we get to start looking into these and saying all these little mind games that help us keep going as an athlete. All right. Everyone around me is improving more rapidly. I'm going to still be improving when they stop. People are starting to get hurt. I'm not. I might have a talent and durability here. Talent is not just speed. Talent is not just VO2 max, although that is a testable characteristic. There also is this phenomenon where the very highest VO2 maxes in history are almost never world record holders. And it's almost as if by having one freakishly high attribute point, something else is missing somewhere else that rounds out that equation. So visible talent is chained to invisible deficiencies. And the less visible talent you see, probably the more invisible talents you have that need to be unearthed, which is why it's very important that when we are beaten early on in our career, we don't give up the sport. When we have setbacks, when we sign up for a marathon and we train our butts off and we get out there and our friend who barely trained beats us, you don't give up the sport. If you love running, do not let slow running ruin that for you, because we have no clue what's waiting 5 years down the road. There are so many athletes right now who are masters monsters that had no discernible talent in high school or college. In fact, I don't know, outside of the marathon, and because track and field has weird rules where I believe 35 or 36 is considered a master's athlete, I don't know outside of that if there are any current world record master running metrics that are held by people who also held a world record, all comers world record early in their career. Whether it's because of burnout or injury or just lack of interest or an inability to hold on to that speed later in life. For one reason or another, Being good early is often a sign that you will not be good late, either by nature or by choice. If you want to be great in your 50s, the quickest way not to be is to be uber successful in your 20s. If you want to be really, really great in your 20s, the easiest way to decide that you won't be is to be exceptional in your teens. And it's really hard to differentiate between desire and lack of talent when someone's great early and not great later. Oftentimes you just fall out of love with it. But the Masters realm is full of athletes who, by all accounts, were talentless in their 10s, 20s, 30s. That's just the way this thing works. And so, if anything, if you take anything out of this conversation today, is that it is never too late, because we don't currently have a test for talent. And we don't currently have a test to show what type of talent you have. And so we are the optimist. We are the one who is always assuming the next big thing is right around the corner. The next big training breakthrough is right around the corner. I mean, we're hunting dinosaur bones here. We are constantly assuming we're about to unearth something and that thing is talent. And that big find is waiting if we just dig a little bit longer. If we just brush away a little bit more of what's covering this ground, we're going to find where our talent lies and what's waiting for us. But the process of digging that up, the process of brushing that all away, is also the same process that makes your talent shine. Discovering you have talent is kind of the same process as maximizing your talent. It's not like at 50, I realize someone like sends me a letter and says, you are going to be a great Masters runner. No, at 50, you find out you're a great Masters runner because you worked hard in your 20s or 30s or 40s. That's the way this works. So staying on it, staying optimistic, and understanding that my talent may not look like your talent. My talent may not shine through the same yours looks. Mine is going to be a slow burn, or mine was a fast burn, and now I'm going to have a late stage comeback. We have to be the eternal optimist in order to stay happy, fresh, in order to stay in love with running. You have to be an optimist. And I believe truly that starts with dispelling with the idea that talent only looks one way. That if I was not a stud, if I was not a prodigy early on, I am not talented. If you need that thing to get out of bed in the morning, if you need to, in order to grind away in the dark, you need to be saying, I do not have talent. They have all the talent and they don't understand it. They don't take advantage of it. They don't value it the way I would. So I'm going to outwork them. Listen, I get that. And if that's what this individual is doing, good for you. But for those of you listening to that individual, you are not talentless just because you're not fast right now. And you're not a lazy worker just because someone who says they don't have talent is beating you. All we can do is unearth our talent, or at least set out on an expedition to do so. Because the same process for finding it is that same process for maximizing it. Talent is not linear. Talent is not indicative of where your ceiling is. So please remember that.